The Evil Farmer. Look, listen well, because this is not just any story. My grandpa told it to me and I was very surprised. In the fields of California there was a small village, surrounded by cornfields that moved with the wind, like a green sea, and dusty roads, where the sun left everything white, lived these two farmers. The first one, he was a simple man. Every morning, before the rooster crowed, he went out to the yard, stretched his arms and raised his hands to the sky. And he said with a calm voice, "Thank you, Lord, for this new day." Then he put on his old hat, so worn it almost had no color left. He slipped into his worn-out boots that sounded firm on the dry ground, and he took his hoe. He didn't have much. He didn't have luxuries, but he always repeated the same thing, like a song learned by heart. With little, but with faith, it is enough. And he went to his field with a steady step. Now listen carefully. The other farmer, the one who lived right next door, was different, very different. That one woke up complaining. If it was hot, he complained because he sweated. If it rained, he complained because he got muddy. If the prices went down in the market, he hit the table in anger. And the worst, listen well, every time he saw his neighbor smile, his blood boiled. He could not stand to see him happy with fewer things. One day while the good farmer was planting, bending his body with patience, dropping the seeds one by one into the soil, the evil one came close to the fence. He leaned on the wood and shouted mockingly, "Hey! Why do you work so much if your field is so small? You'll never get anything out of it." The good man lifted his head, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and replied calmly, without anger, "The fruit does not depend only on the soil, neighbor. The fruit depends on God." The evil one let out a harsh laugh, an ugly laugh, full of contempt. "Bah, that's nonsense. The land gives what you put in it, and nothing more." The good man just smiled a little, lowered his gaze, and kept planting. Do you see the difference? One with faith, the other with envy. One sows in peace, the other only sows resentment. The evil man could not handle the rage. Every time he looked at his neighbor's field, it seemed everything was greener, more alive. And that burned him inside, like fire. One night, when the moon was high and the crickets were singing, he got up in silence. He put a sack of salt on his shoulders and walked toward his neighbor's field. His boots barely made a sound on the dry soil. "Now, yes," he muttered between his teeth, "this fool will cry when he sees his land burned." He reached the edge of the field and began to throw the salt in handfuls, scattering it in a corner of the land. Each handful was followed by a low, ugly laugh, as if he was already celebrating. "Take that, fool," he said in a low voice. "Let's see if tomorrow you smile the same." When he finished, he brushed off his hands, satisfied, and went back to his house with a light step, thinking of his neighbor's misfortune. But listen well. Listen slowly. The days passed, and what the evil man expected did not happen. On the contrary, in that corner where he threw the salt, the corn grew taller, stronger, more golden than in the rest of the field. The good farmer was left amazed. He walked to the plants, touched the shining leaves, looked up, and said with tearful eyes, "Lord, I don't understand anything, but thank you, because even the tired soil blooms." And he kept working with more spirit. The evil man, hidden behind a tree, with his hat covering his face, gritted his teeth until almost breaking them. He muttered full of rage, "Impossible. The salt should have dried it. This is a mockery. He left kicking stones, muttering insults. But the evil man did not give up. No, sir. Envy is like a thorn stuck. If you don't pull it out, it sinks deeper. And this man was already blind with anger. One dawn before the sun rose, he opened the door of his chicken coop. The birds came out, clucking, stirred up, and he pushed them toward the neighbor's field. Go, go, he shouted. Ruin that useless field. Peck it to the root. The hens went in and began to scratch the soil, to peck at the tender leaves, to mess everything up. The evil man rubbed his hands with malice. Now, yes, now his field is ruined, he whispered, laughing with a harsh, ugly sound. When the sun rose, the good man's field looked messy, with broken leaves and disturbed furrows. The evil man from afar smiled with satisfaction. But listen well, because here is the surprising part. That same afternoon, the sky filled with clouds, and a gentle, fresh rain began to fall. One of those that cleans the air and leaves the smell of new earth. The water washed the whole field. The moved soil settled, and what seemed destruction turned into fertilizer. The next day the plants were firmer, straighter, and with a green, more alive than ever. The good farmer, seeing this, put his hands over his chest and said with a trembling voice, "Thank you, Lord, because you take care of what my eyes cannot." And he stayed silent for a while, watching the field, with a smile that looked like peace. The evil man, hidden behind a bush, saw the scene and almost tore off his hat in rage. He threw himself to the ground and hit the earth with his fists. "No, that can't be. Even my hens help him." He shouted and cursed while the hens returned on their own to their coop, clucking as if laughing at him. The evil man was already mad with envy, and he thought of something worse. One night, with the sky dark and the crickets singing, the evil man left his house. He carried 2 large buckets full of dirty water with mud, with rotten remains, with waste. He walked with hurried steps, panting, and in his mouth he murmured, "Now yes, now I'll ruin it once and for all. This filthy water will sicken his plants, his corn will rot, and I will laugh. I will laugh loud." He reached the irrigation canal that passed near his neighbor's field. With a twisted smile he poured out the first bucket. The dark water ran like a snake. Then the second. "Take that, fool," he said in a low, cruel voice. "Let's see if tomorrow you keep looking at the sky with that smile." He rubbed his hands, satisfied, and went back home thinking he had finally won. But listen well. The days passed, and what he expected did not happen. On the contrary, that water, though dirty, came loaded with minerals and nutrients from the hill, and the neighbor's field grew even more beautiful. The cornstalks became thick, strong like trunks. The leaves opened wide, shining, and the cobs began to grow fat, full of golden grains that seemed to glow under the sun. The good man walked through his field and could not believe what he saw. He touched the leaves, felt the stalks, and lifted his eyes to the sky, saying, "Lord, your hand is in every detail. I only plant, but you make it grow." He smiled, and with that smile he went back to work. Meanwhile, the evil man on the other side of the fence held his head in both hands. He pulled at his hair, kicked the ground, and shouted, "I don't understand anything. Everything bad I do turns in his favor. This is a mockery." His voice echoed across the field, but no one answered him. One afternoon he could not bear it anymore. He left his house fuming, crossed to the neighbor's field, and found him bent down, pulling weeds with patience. The evil man hit the fence with his fist and shouted with rage, "Tell me the truth. What witchcraft do you use? Nobody can have so much success with so little." The good man stood up slowly, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and looked at him calmly. His voice was steady, almost soft. "There is no witchcraft, neighbor. Only faith. I sow, I water, and I trust. The rest God does." The evil man stepped forward with eyes red with anger. "Lies!" he roared. "I work the same, and my field is dry. What do you have that I don't?" The good man took a deep breath, looked at his corn, and then looked back at him. In a low, measured voice he said, "It is not the same to sow with anger as to sow with gratitude. The earth feels what one carries in the heart." The evil man stayed silent for a moment. His chest rose and fell like a bellows. Then he spat on the ground, cursed, and turned around, walking back with heavy steps. That night the evil man tossed in bed. He could not sleep. Envy burned him. He stared at the ceiling and thought, "If they don't die on their own, I will kill them myself." He got up, took a large sack, and went out to the neighbor's field with the moon high. He walked fast with wild eyes, muttering between his teeth, "It's over. This field will not see harvest. If God won't destroy it, I will." He entered the rows of corn and began to rip plants with his hands. He pulled hard. The leaves cut his arms, but he did not stop. "Die, corn! Die!" he shouted, panting. "I want to see you dry." He tore out several plants and threw them to the ground. Then suddenly the wind began to blow strong. The corn leaves moved as if speaking to each other. The clouds covered the moon, and the sky lit up with a lightning bolt that cut the darkness. The evil man froze, with the sack in his hand, and another bolt fell suddenly, but not in the good man's field. It struck the evil man's barn, there on his land. The blast was so loud it was heard across the valley. In seconds the fire rose, red, tall, furious. The smoke climbed like a giant. The evil man dropped the sack and ran in despair. "No, not my barn," he cried. My harvest, my reserves." He ran, tried to throw dirt with his hands, looked for water, shouted for help. But there was nothing to do. The fire roared, devouring the dry wood, the beams, the sacks of grain. Everything burned. The neighbors, woken by the noise, looked from afar. Some ran with buckets, but it was useless. The evil man's barn was reduced to ashes in minutes. Meanwhile, the good farmer came out of his house, saw the glow in the sky, put his hands together and murmured, "Lord, have mercy." The days passed. The good man's field remained firm, golden, beautiful, ready for harvest. In contrast, the evil man's field was sad, dry, and his heart even drier. He walked like a ghost in his yard, without speaking, without smiling, not knowing what to do. One midday, when the sun was strong, the good farmer came to his house. He carried a basket full of fresh corn. He knocked on the door, and when the evil man opened, he looked at him with a sincere smile and said, "Neighbor, bread is meant to be shared." The evil man lowered his gaze. His eyes were wet, his hands trembling. For the first time in a long while, he could not answer with rage. He took the corn in silence, and though he said nothing, a tear rolled down his cheek. And so it was. Listen well. Everything the evil man tried to use as a curse turned into blessing. Every trap, every deceit, turned around and strengthened the one who trusted in God. Because envy dries the heart, but faith, humble and sincere faith, makes life grow.